Hello and welcome to the live Cybersecurity Awareness Forum for August 23rd, 2023. I'm Scott Wright, the Employee Security Awareness Experience Guy and founder of ClickArmor, which brings you this series. And I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But for now, just want to welcome you to session number 26 of our bi-weekly series of panel discussions on topics of interest to security awareness managers, CISOs, and anyone who really cares about security culture and risk management. So welcome if you're new to the series. In a moment, I'm going to invite Ryan to introduce our panel, and then we'll get right into things. But right now, I'd just like everyone to enter into the chat where they're coming from, and we'll do a little bit of a roll call around the world and see where what kind of interesting places we have people joining us from. So, wow, lots of people. So New York City, Dallas, North Carolina, Ottawa, Oslo, Mississauga, Ontario, Aurelia, Edmonton, Canada, Minnesota. There we go. So lots of people from all over the place. So yeah, please let us know where you're coming from, and we will. New Jersey, Chicago. Perfect. So lots of people coming in. That's excellent. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan now, who will do a really brief intro for our panelists, and we will dive into things.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. It's great to see you all. Our panel today consists of Michelle. Michelle is the founder of Ritsu, a consultancy that helps startups to create meaningful and simple security education strategies. She is also an expert Target shopper and gets therapy from Peloton rides. Thank you, Michelle. Next up, Fleetus. Fleetus is a seasoned IT and security professional, currently a security operations manager. Beyond his expertise, he finds immense joy in sharing his passion for cybersecurity with others. Thank you, Fleetus, for joining us again. Erin, who might be joining us from an airport. Erin has been working in the security awareness field for 5 years. She's helped build programs for companies ranging from 1,200 employees to 500,000. Erin has a true passion for maintaining the human connection in all things security and awareness. So thank you, Erin, for joining. And I am Ryan Healey-Ogden. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity Solutions over here at ClickArmor. I, too, share cybersecurity as a passion and as a hobby. And so, again, thank you all for joining. Thank you for the panel. And Scott, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ryan, and thank you, everybody, for joining. One more quick note for the panelists. If you haven't been on with us, if you weren't on last time, we tried a slightly different format, which I think worked really well, where I used to do a round robin of asking a question and then seeing what everybody thought about it, and it kind of got a little bit repetitive sometimes. So this time, if the panelists have a comment, I'd like them to raise their hand, and I'm not sure if attendees can raise their hand, but we'll watch for indications from attendees who want to make a comment as well. So, we have a comment from Steven. No, just kidding. Anyway, all that is good. I think we've got our ducks in a row, and I'm just going to share my screen a little bit so we can do a little bit of guidance through the actual session. So what we do with these sessions, just if you haven't been here before, is we do record them all on Zoom. Sometimes we'll be trying to do some streaming, but no guarantees on the streaming side. But we do post the full session on YouTube within a few days, and you can usually find those at our playlist on YouTube there. We also have an extract that is done, to do a transcript of the whole session. So we post some insights from the transcript on our blog post at clickarmor.ca, but the transcript is also available if you want to go back and hear more about what people said, if it's not clear on the YouTube or recording or whatever. The other really important thing we do now is we distill all of the session content into some really interesting insights, and we put them in a quarterly report we call the CISO report on security awareness. And we just finished the Q2 version. So this QR code on the screen should get you to the Q2 version of the CISO report on security awareness. And that covers the 6 sessions that we did in Q2 of 2023. So really interesting to dig in there and see what kinds of things you might be able to find as insights. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with a little bit of context for what we're going to talk about today. And it's the day in the life of security awareness managers, if I didn't say that earlier. the topic of today's session. And there's a lot of things we could talk about here, but having worked with a lot of different managers, people sometimes are dedicated to doing security awareness in their job, and sometimes they're stretched between a number of jobs. Maybe they're running their identity management program and they got handed down the responsibility for doing security awareness as well. And that happens a lot. And it's funny, I saw one comment from somebody on LinkedIn when they were looking at the post, and they said, there's actually a role for security awareness managers. So I thought that was kind of funny that there are people who think that doesn't happen, but it does. So I'm going to just roll through some of the ideas of the observations I've seen, awareness managers do. I've got 3 pages of these things. So I'll stop after each sort of group and see if people have any comments. And Ryan, maybe you can identify anybody who might have a comment or question around these particular topics. So when security awareness managers I've been working with are come into the job every day, they're usually starting by fielding calls about the program. Things like, do I really have to do this training, or I never got the notification and I can't log in, I don't have time, and the course is discriminatory. Like, really, these are things that managers get. Anybody have any special ones that they love to relay to people and let them know? Happy to hear about them. There's also fielding questions about guidance. The training says I should do this, but I don't think that's right for me. Or if I do this and I get this message, what do I do? Or the best one is, I think I clicked that bad link. What should I do now? Right? Rather than calling the service desk, people have to ask the security awareness manager. So, and then there's obviously the other kinds of reports from management. The board wants some kind of report on how many people clicked in the last 2 phishing simulations, or HR needs a new format for their compliance reports, or why haven't we got 100% compliance yet? So any thoughts on those from the panel, Ryan?
Yes.
Oh.
Just yes to everything.
Aaron, as our most recent panelist and security awareness manager to that title, I will let you go first.
I just want to preface too, I am in an airport. I tried to get my best headset going. Yes, everything you said, everything that's on here is true. But I do see myself as much more of the wonderful bridge in between the organization and the security team. And we do get to be the fun people. We do get to be creative, but we also do answer those questions, but hopefully we answer and mitigate them in the most appropriate and positive way possible. So that was just what I was going to add.
Yeah, it's a bit of time management, right, Aaron? I mean, you have to you want to get to the fun stuff, right? But you gotta deal with some of these things as a priority.
Yeah.
Comments in the chat?
Yeah, I'll grab the chat after Fleetus.
Sure.
So I was going to address, as Ryan mentioned, I'm the security operations manager. So what Nick posted is, I hear this question all the time from my point of view, not just as much from the awareness. You have tools. I should be able to click on what I want to click on when I want to click on it, as many times as I want to click on it, because you are there to protect me. So, and then the last one there, the second one I also address. You gave me remedial training, but I didn't do anything. I refused to do this training. I've also seen that one numerous times from my point of view when I've tagged someone for engaging with a drive-by or social engineering, and we've assigned training to them from an HR or awareness point of view.
Nice.
Yeah, and also John in the chat there made a comment about security awareness managers are the fun police. They're the ones who tell you not to click on suspicious links, not to open attachments from people you don't know, and to change your passwords every few months. They're also the ones who come up with creative ways to get people to pay attention to security, like funny memes and videos. So, they operate on both sides of the fence, and it's kind of I would see security managers having to play the role of good cop and bad cop all in one, just to be able to be effective most of the time. Thank you for the chat feedback. Anyone else on the panel? If not,
yes. So I'll just sort of wrap up this particular slide. There's 2 others that have other things that we can talk about as well. But the last one was outreach to teams, and that's something that is, I think maybe Aaron might call fun as well. You get to go out and talk to managers or groups of people and find out about what special risks their team might be seeing that you didn't realize happened. And this goes back to our chats we've had before with Michelle and others, where it's just like talk to your team and get some feedback from people and find out what what's going on in their world and get closer to them. And then figure out, what special treatment they need, or find out if they have ideas about what kind of things would work better for them. So that's one of the fun things. The other fun things are, choosing the next course content, right? What should people be trained on? Do they need foundational training for fishing or social engineering or some other use case? Sometimes there's micro learning that comes between foundational training. You don't want to put people through an 1.5 hour long training every month. So you do little bits once in a while. And you might also need to be coordinating remedial training, as we were just talking about, the people who need some help, and where do you schedule that stuff in? So beyond that, choosing the next fishing simulation template, if you're doing fishing simulations, and most people are, but we always sometimes on this panel, we sometimes have varying opinions on whether those should be done or not. The question is, if you're doing those things, how much time are you spending on managing fishing simulations? So that could be a good topic for discussion. Any thoughts on that from the panel?
I have some thoughts, but I want to wait until you get to the end.
Okay, all right. So I'll run through this then quickly. Sending out notifications. There's a new course to be completed, or you've already completed the course. Congratulations. It's another fun thing to do, unless it's automated, and then you sometimes don't even realize how many people have completed it. But then sending out reminders. You haven't started the course yet, or you haven't finished the course. And then on my last page of notes here, scheduling the next course or assessment. Is it going to happen? Is it going to start before everybody's finished the first one? How long do you wait? So there's all these things going through the security awareness manager's minds, and sometimes you have to negotiate with management and decide, is it too much to start another course before everybody's finished it? And those last few are always the hard ones, right? They always take the longest to get through the training. And then more fun stuff, developing the content. If you have the power to do that, whether it's creating PowerPoint for lunch and learns, or web pages for your intranet, or even doing newsletter content. Then, of course, we've got Security Awareness Month coming up. We've talked before about how you can be starting to think about that stuff very early. So that could be more of your strategic activities throughout the year, trying to figure out who you can get on board, if you need special resources for doing video or audio or things like that. And then finally, last thing I thought of was fighting for resources, right? We need budget to buy the next licensed year of the training platform. We need help with corporate communications for graphics or newsletter stuff. And we need IT help if we're doing fishing simulations. We have to coordinate the testing, the delivery testing, and making sure that those emails will get through to people. If filters are blocking them or detonating them, that takes up time to go and negotiate these things. And likely you need another staff member, but rarely are you going to get one. So these are all the things that I think go through the minds of security awareness managers. So let's sort of start passing it around to the panel and the chat group and see what people think of all the things that I just covered. Go ahead, Michelle.
The slightly controversial thing, as usual, that I would love to say, and I do this in my workshops, is that, which I do for free, by the way, I'm not plugging anything here, is that I turn it on its head. And I think one of the biggest problems we've got in the sector, in this role, is that if you look at everything that you've just put up on those 3 slides, that's probably quite common to most people in the role, whether they're managing it or whether they're managing a team, or whether they're a team of one. And I've been both. And that's too much, because most people, if you're managing, you're enabling the work by definition. You're no longer doing the work as such, you are leading that team. But that isn't really possible in security awareness, because you're often a team of 1 or 2. You're doing huge amounts, and you could take probably even 1 slide of that and present it to most people, and they would say, oh, that's too much. And I do think there's too much that we try and do. So I think constructively what I would say is that we do tend to try and take on too much. And from my training background, when I look at all that, creating content, doing this, doing that, going out and asking people, TNAs, all the rest of it, working, communicating upwards, communicating across, writing things up, and that's before you put the data analytics for all the phishing sims, which I actually hate, but okay, people are doing them. That's, I've worked with teams of 20 to 30 people, which then expanded out to 150, 200 across global businesses, because you literally couldn't do what you needed to do. So I think it's quite important that we're mindful of the burnout that we can experience in this role, and that a lot of the you should be doing this is coming from actually people who've never done the job. They're just sitting there and honestly, I sit there and I think, you've never done the job. When I look at you, I think you've never actually done this. You don't understand what it's like to try and communicate upwards, or talk to people across a business, or get budget, or actually do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great point. I think just to liken to your analogy there, someone in the chat just said security awareness managers are like the parents of the IT department. They're always trying to get their kids, employees, to behave, but they never seem to have enough resources, money, time, manpower. But just like parents, security awareness managers never give up. But just like parents, to Michelle's point, you have to be mindful of your time and your resources in order to kind of pick and choose your battles effectively to try and get the change that you need, across the organization to get those kids in line, or those employees, so to speak. I think Fleetus was the next up with this hand there.
So shameless plug. I'm passionate about this from the security operations point of view. So I will be giving a presentation tomorrow for an awareness summit that Aaron is actually attending. Security
And I'm
operations
attending.
The security operations is the missing piece of your security awareness program. So to Michelle's point, using your security operations team as a conduit to give you information, to present information to the employees, aka peers, call them your peer, and to help with that carrot versus stick. So like, the security awareness manager should be sitting with the security operation manager, the threat intel manager, the IR manager, the TVM manager, whatever organization, however large it is, and meeting with them and using their resources to be an extension of their own resources.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Fleetus.
Thank you. And next up is Aaron.
I am so glad you just said that because that was one of my other big points. I just have a lot of thoughts in my head right now, so let's try to get them out cohesively.
Take your time. Take a breath.
On Fleetus's point, when we talk about building relationships as a security awareness manager, it's interesting because I think the first thing a lot of people think of is I need to build relationships with the business, which is absolutely true, and something that I'm working on right now is to target, going through the analytics to see who are our most vulnerable people, who are most attacked, maybe not even the people who click the most, but who are the most attacked. And let's talk to them and understand, BAU. And then we can adapt some training that's specifically for them that's actually relevant, and not an annual training that's generic for everybody. But the flip side of that is, where am I going to get that information from? And I need to get that from the security operations team. So a huge part of my job is not just to get to know my business, but it's also to get to know my peers and to get to know the different departments within security, because I'm able to communicate out what they need heard, and I can communicate it in a way that the business is going to understand. And I honestly would sum up being a security awareness manager best as that bridge, like I said before, because you want to view security or your internal security team as one entity. You don't want people to think you have to reach out to Fleetus for security operations, you have to reach out to Joe for this, and Barbara for the other thing. You want one person to be the distribution channel, and then give the time back to your security teams to focus on what they need. You're almost a delegator for the security teams as well, at least in my roles that I've experienced.
Yeah.
I also don't fish currently, Michelle, which I think is really funny because I love fishing. I have thoughts about it, but we can get onto that at another time.
I think we're going to have an entire panel based on that. But yeah, that's a great point. I think, from the chat, it says, sounds like this is supposed to be a team effort. And obviously, like, that is kind of resonating here. Targeted training is really important. Thank you, Thea, for that comment. And then Nick made a good point that I'm actually interested from the panel point of view what your thoughts are. Nick said making security awareness training participation part of the employee's annual performance review critique process is highly effective. So have your organizations, done that? And how do you feel about incorporating that as kind of a marker of performance? And I think, Michelle, you had your hand up, so you can take it from here.
Yeah, well, to answer that point, I would be quite nervous about that. I can see where it's coming from, but I think to just go to mix the points together that Fleeters and Erin made, which I agree with, are just I think the main point that people forget is that we talk about communications here, and that's a discipline in itself. And people simply won't listen to your communication if they don't believe in you. And I think I don't think, I'm sorry, and this is again a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it because I've worked across a number of different sectors. Security is possibly one of the only sectors I've ever worked in where you actually get security teams, and I've heard various ones, whether I've worked on them or not, admitting they don't do things, admitting that there's problems that they shouldn't. And this isn't just, oh, this is our risk appetite or whatever. Just sort of saying, no, we don't do that. No, we know that's broken. No, we know we can't do that. We're covering it up. They often are unapproachable. They often are the ones, if you were going to fish, I always say, if you want me to fish, I'll fish the security teams first. Let's eat our dog food. Let's go. And not quite as aggressively as I might have just sounded there. But, I think the problem is that we're the people who are often the best at communicating, and we're the ones who understand that you've got to go out and talk to different interested parties in different ways, and that just blaming people and doing all the rest of it and all this mandatory training, that isn't going to make any difference really, because it's what you do with people that's actually going to make the difference ultimately. So I think it's really important to remember that we are communicators outwards, and that this role can be a huge amount. That's my biggest thing, actually, that this role can be behavior change, culture change, risk, human risk, whatever. And actually there's so many different things it is, but we need to really focus. When you go into role, you have to kind of define what it is for you and what the business wants, and kind of, because otherwise it can be everything and you can't do it all. Nobody can.
Great points. Fleetus, you're up next.
So I tweak that instead of security awareness training participation, security awareness and culture involvement. So have they attended a session? Mm-hmm. Have they produced content for a session? Have they given feedback on a session? Because just adding value is probably where I would put it in my performance review of, did you participate in X? Did you fill out survey Y? Did you give comments on infographic Z? And then getting that from the awareness manager or the team is my team engaging with you? As I said, I'm the security operations manager. Are you getting what you need from my peers? So is my SOC analyst giving you the right metrics? Is my IR team giving you the right remediation? Is my TVM team sharing the right vulnerabilities? Because we know not every org has the same threats. So what is the vulnerability to the org? Are they sharing that? And then am I, as the manager, giving the right support as my review to those programs? Am I empowering my team to give lunch and learns on what we're seeing and anonymize it? Am I empowering my team to do brown bags or AMAs, ask me anything? Am I empowering them to give that opportunity to partner with an Erin or Michelle in whatever avenue they need? That's where I think that value comes in versus, did you take the training?
Yeah, valid point. Katya from the chat says, I agree with Michelle. It will add more stress to employees. I understand the perspective that we need to fight this mindset that security has nothing to do with me. I think we need to explain to the consequences of the potential attack that caused by a simple click. It might be the reason the company closure will affect employees directly. Totally. And we've talked about that so many times before, of just helping people understand the why can really get them to kind of complete this along the lines. Scott, your hand was up next.
Yeah, I wanted to just follow up on Nick's comment about the performance review process, and he said it's highly effective. So I was wondering if you might be able to come on, Mike, and share with us where he's seen it effective, because I've actually never seen anybody actually be able to get it to even be implemented, let alone work. So
Nick said yes. Okay,
Nick
here we go.
He's on. Okay, so I'm going to allow him to talk, and hopefully, Nick, you'll be. Just go off mute. There you go.
Hey everybody. So yeah, we implemented that about 10 years ago within our organization, to where our training and relations and employee relations department had put together an annual refresher training program on all matters pertaining to what we do within our business. That's security and awareness. That's like time charging. There's reporting, incidences, disaster, preparedness, all that kind of stuff. And so there's about 15 classes that are usually around like 30 minutes or so. And they're interactive with the training. And you have 30 days to 45 days to complete the training once the training notice comes out. But you have to have all the training done by the end of the year, by like, I think, I want to say like mid-November is our cutoff for that. And that tracking mechanism that's built into that is forwarded to their managers and senior managers, and they track who is, doing that when or hasn't. And when annual reviews come out, you are required to have that process done as part of your critique. And so it, enables the participation. That way, nobody can say, "I didn't know." So that's the part that we were trying to, solve is making sure that everybody at least participated in it.
And was there any backlash? That's what I meant to say. Any backlash from staff in a significant way, or how was that handled if it did?
So, I mean, there's, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. So I'm sure that there were, some folks that were consider that less than favorable. But once they understood what the buy-in was, is that the better that we do our job, and our job is creating things for Department of Defense customers. And so the higher standard that we have for ourselves, the better product that we make ensures that we all have jobs. And so once you kind of like started presenting it from that aspect of, hey, this is, we're all in this together, and the better we do this, the longer we can do it for. And so that's kind of like the
That's
way
great.
It sounds amazing.
Bring that ownership to it.
A very progressive way to think, as you mentioned, starting 10 years ago. I mean, this is kind of a dream of a lot of security programs out there, to get to the point where employees believe they're a part of the solution and not a part of the problem.
Correct.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Erin?
It's interesting talking about, because I feel like this kind of goes back to the carrot stick conversation we had a couple weeks ago, where I don't necessarily agree that it should be part of somebody's performance review. And I say that for a couple of reasons. That we assume there's a difference between having numbers and having value in the numbers that we're presenting. And it can be a topic to talk about further in the phishing one. But like, my question that I always talk to people about is, what do you think is the most valuable metric in a phishing simulation? And most people would say it's a click rate, but I would argue it's not. I would argue it's the report rate. And I say that because it shows that you've taught somebody to do an actionable and positive behavior. Even if they clicked it and they went back to report something, you have an engagement and a metric that shows that you have taught people how to do something. So if you see people, increase the report rate over time, that's a valuable metric. It can be a controversial statement. I don't think anybody has ever learned something from an online video training that's super effective, that they have to sit down for 30 minutes. Of course, you're going to take away something, but I think people only take about 30% of everything that's been thrown at them. So they're not going to take on a lot of that information. And then the other piece of it is that if we're going to make something a somewhat punitive, consequence if they don't do something, we also have to ask ourselves as security people, did we communicate that effectively? Which kind of goes to Michelle's point too, is that we're communicators. If we're going to automatically punish them for not doing a thing, did we actually teach them something in that thing? And that's the questions that we really have to ask ourselves. So I'm very against the punitive thing. I'm the fun police over here, as somebody said. I'm not here to be punitive.
That's awesome. It's going to be Michelle's turn, but just before she goes, I'm just going to let people know I'm going to launch a poll question for people to answer. The panelists can see the poll, but you can't participate in it. So we're going to let Michelle go on and add her comments.
Just very quickly, I can completely see why. I agree with Erin there. I completely see why, though, that Nick or companies like that would have that level of compliance. But that's the point that I really want to kind of drive home as well, is that we exist, I think, awareness, and I actually hate the term security awareness, because you're aware of what I'm aware of quantum computing, but I couldn't explain it to you apart from the fact that I think there's space lasers involved at some part. But anyway, we do exist kind of because companies often are kind of go, oh my God, we need somebody in here. Let's get it in. But doing that training, I can understand, especially if you work with the DoD or anything, you need to have that, that tick box. Yeah, that they've absolutely done it, because you don't want to have that. Well, they will be demanding of it. The DoD are going to demand that you have that level, but that is an HR thing. That's an HR function. That's nothing to do with us. And I think we don't need to be. We can work with HR and L&D, but HR are just there to go, yeah, have they done their competition law training? Have they done their anti-fraud? Have they done their what happens at the dawn raid and all the rest of it? All that kind of training, heavy manual handling, all the rest of it. Cybersecurity training gets bolted in with all of that. And that becomes from us, but that isn't really anything to do with us. And I don't really, well, it is, but it isn't. I don't really want to have anything to do with.
Did you say dawn raid?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether you have that over there, but we have to.
Yeah, I thought it was a movie or something.
No, like if they come in, well, certainly in the UK, my camera just went. If they come in and they think that you've been doing something fraud-wise, your organisation has, not you, hopefully, they often call it a dawn raid, and they'll come in, not necessarily at dawn, but you have to understand how to comply with those officers when they're coming in and what you can give them and what you shouldn't. So it's a bit like anti-fraud training. But my point just being that we need to move away from just being compliance tick boxy people, which is where all the phishing comes from. Just, okay, we've done that. Okay, good. We've got that metric. But what's your outcome? But I understand why Nick's company would do that. There's no way around that.
And that's the day in the life of the security awareness manager, right? It goes from just, what am I going to be able to present today to how do I get buy-in to should I be penalizing employees, on their annual reports, and it's all these different things. And this is the conversation is fantastic. So thank you, Fleetus.
I want to jump into, I've been monitoring the chat, so this is where I want to come in. Like, John's made some very good points here. It says employees are bombarded with security warnings all day long. Yeah. So both from the security manager side and the security operations side, we have to watch the fatigue moment. We can fatigue you very quickly with infographics, data, invalid certs, whatever we prompt you with, MFA. And if all we're doing is sending prompts to you all day long, you're going to eventually cry wolf and you're just going to start clicking yes. You're just going to get tired of it. You're just going to click through. We've taught you to click through. Legacy statement, we used to teach people to look for a lock. We didn't explain what the lock actually meant in a website. We just meant that the communications were encrypted. We never said it was safe, but every person heard it was safe because we told them just to go look for a lock. Like, to Michelle's point, security awareness. What are you aware of? I'm aware that there's a yellow lock in my browser. That's all I'm aware of. There's a lock in my browser. So, but yeah, I appreciate John's comments. I agree a lot. I can see it from the awareness manager and the ops manager very much in this conversation that we do fatigue our employees.
And I think the teamwork aspect then comes into play of having like the ops manager working with the awareness manager and, then even just HR to make sure that there isn't an abundance of notifications and alerts and warnings going out for security and everything else. Because there is a certain point where you just turn off, you just stop paying attention to all these little dings and pop-ups and buzzes and all that. And, that could be a very bad time. Aaron?
I just wanted to tell a really quick story about fatigue,
ahead.
But both it's not just fatigue on the business side, it's fatigue on our team side, because in one of my companies that I worked for before I joined the company, somebody just picked up the awareness side because it was given to them and they were voluntold to do it. And they just got so fed up with the amount of people clicking on phishing simulations that they just sent a phishing simulation that said, this is a phishing simulation, don't click on it. And they still had 25 people click on that. So there is a point where we're done, they're done, and it's our fault that we kind of got to that point. So I just thought that was a funny thing to share.
Very cool. No more comments. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So the poll question was, which of these does your security awareness manager or person responsible for security awareness spend the most time on? So we had 16 respondents. 30% said coordination of the problem. Sorry, 31% said coordination, and 38% said planning content. So that's actually more encouraging than I thought it was going to be. I thought there'd be people spending a lot more time on the management side of things. And then reporting was 19% and fielding calls was 13%. Nobody's making calls out. Well, what does that mean, Aaron, if they're not reaching out to people and talking to the teams?
In all fairness, I don't know if I necessarily make calls, but I send a lot of Slack messages. And then we set up calls, and then we do the follow-up.
Yeah, I should have been more.
I would
more
throw that
inclusive.
into the coordination piece too. So like
Okay,
I do a lot of coordination, and that is planning with different teams and setting up time and learning about what they do to better train them. So I honestly agree with that breakdown.
That's great. Any other comments, guys? All right. So we'll stop sharing that, and I'm going to bring up my little deck again, and we're going to just do a quick, done our poll. We're going to do another poll in a minute. Just a quick mention of ClickArmor, because ClickArmor sponsors this series. ClickArmor delivers a more effective security awareness training program for less effort and in less time than other platforms, basically because we provide more engagement with employees, a more positive and inclusive experience where people actually feel good about learning some of this stuff rather than being tricked, and more safe ways for employees to practice spotting threats. So we do lots of interactive simulations, choose your own adventure, and just some fun challenges and puzzles, which help people just retain the knowledge when it's gamified. They want to go back in and try again and improve their score. One of the things we talked about previously was how people kind of care about where they are on the leaderboard. They may not be a gamer, but everybody kind of thinks they're in the top half of the organization when it comes to their proficiency. But the faster results is also important because as we've been talking about, employees and security awareness managers are very, very busy. And if you're spending all your time chasing employees or sending out notifications, then that's taking time away from some of the more important things that you should be doing. So just wanted to let you know, if you want to learn more about ClickArmor and what we're doing to make security awareness training more effective and faster and more efficient for security awareness managers, then do give us a call for a free consultation. So with that, I'm going to move into a general question for the panel. At what point does an organization need a dedicated security awareness manager? How do you decide, or how should you recommend to management that you actually need somebody to do this as a dedicated job if you're not already? Any thoughts? Start with Ryan.
Well, Aaron just put up her hand.
Oh, Aaron, sure.
Yeah, at what point? And also, I was going to say, Nick, if you wanted to jump back on and let us know how your organization was pushed into that 10 years ago, that'd be great insight as well. But Aaron, go ahead.
So at what point does an organization need a dedicated awareness person? It's at the point where you decided that you really want to see human behavior change. Because I think, as I said in my bio, I'm really passionate about keeping the human connection in security. And you're not going to see that valuable change to an organization. You're not going to see that reduction in risk. You're not going to see that increase in engagement unless you have a dedicated person that has the time to go build those relationships with the organization. So if that's where you're at with your organization and you really want to see meaningful change, that's the point you decide to have a security awareness person.
Thanks very much.
Awesome. Fleetus. And then we'll go to Nick.
So I think we had this brief discussion in LinkedIn and some other places. This is a very tricky way of going about when you say dedicated. Because at first it's probably going to be a coordinator, it's going to be an analyst who's partnering with a sister organization. And as your org gets large enough that it justifies a 40-hour week, and when I say justifies, there's always 40 hours in security awareness, but from a budgetary point of view, from a headcount point of view, and then once you have to figure out where you want to place them. We can have a whole different conversation of where the security awareness manager reports. Do they report to legal? Do they report to HR? If they do, they're likely compliance based. If they report to IT, they're likely trying to build a program. If they report to security, they need to be either with a director or higher to get the buy-in from the top down to be able to produce metrics, value add, and a budget. So likely your CISO you should report directly to your CISO or CIO if it's depending on the size of your org to allow you to have that opportunity, and then be a peer to other security managers. As we talked earlier, like unlike Michelle, like the security manager is likely still hands-on. Like they're not leading a team until they grow and can get an analyst or a coordinator or business analyst underneath them to do comps, to do gamification, to do platforms. So I'm going to say it depends, because it really depends on the size of your organization and the budget that you have. But there's a lot of factors, as I just went through, on where it is placed in your org to decide what level you want your program to be. If it's just going to be compliance, stick it with HR, stick it with legal. If you're willing to build a program, put it in IT, put it in security.
Awesome. Thank you, Fleetus. I hand it over to Nick. Just my opinion from if someone was going to ask me, I've got a startup, what's the point? I would say as soon as you possibly can, and wear multiple hats. Like everyone already wears multiple hats when you're in a startup, when you're in a young organization. So I think, when you sit down on your roadmap of, okay, I'm going to take this role, this role, this role, I think security awareness manager should be in that, and right off the top. So whoever's taking care of IT or security as a whole, why not start from the ground up and build that security culture from the get-go? And yes, of course, then you have to decide at what point does it need a full-time position, and at what point does that person need a team, et cetera. And that's how it'll kind of grow out. So I'd love to hear from Nick to see how that journey was, and we'll go from there.
So why attract the masses, and how and what are nothing without why. So when you're looking at getting buy-in, if you will, from the masses, you have to craft a message that appeals to them. So if you think of, why do people like Apple products so much, right? Or because it's something that they see as being personal to them, they buy into it, right? And so the what and the how are the what is the training, the how is the delivery process, the message that we're putting together for them, but the why is like this is how we take on personal ownership for it. And so when we kind of like wrapped our minds around that and figured out what the why was that we were trying to sell to others, it's the things that we're doing, the products that we're working on, the solutions that we're delivering, everything that we're doing here is not really ours per se. We're doing this for our customer. And so why we're doing it is because we're invested in this. We have a requirement from our customer to be at a certain level of compliance with that, and protecting their data and their stuff. And so without us being able to do that and to go through this training, we can't do this job. So that this affects everybody's livelihood. And we are big proponents on security is everybody's business. And so in order for it to be everybody's business, everybody needs to participate. So we don't do it as a, we don't lord this over them like, carrots and sticks, if you will. But being part of the process in order for us to remain in business, well, that's everybody's business. And so, we engage with the why part of it. And that's where we've had our most success.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that insight. That's awesome. Erin?
I just want to talk to John's comment in the chat. It's a really interesting point, and one that resonates really well. We are not here to be an urgent need. We are like an insurance policy for you in a way. Like we are here for the long game. We are here to see change happen, but we're not here, with incident responses. We're not here in real time trying to fix all the problems. We're here to try to address things and work to find a strategy that's going to be sustainable over time. So I always describe this role as important but not urgent. We are never in a state of urgency. We are the proactive team versus the reactive team. So I just thought I agree with what John was saying.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thank you. And Fleetus.
So I'm going to be combative on that one. I actually ask my awareness manager to be more real time. So like they're invited to our incident response plans. They sit in on an event if we ever start an IR engagement so that they can help with the communications to the employees, because I want them aware of what we're tackling, and I want them part of that response. Instead of being proactive, they can help us be reactive. They can help us make sure that the comms we're getting to marketing, and we're getting to legal, we're getting to our C levels align with what we're also sending to our individual contributors, to our peers, because there needs to be unity and there needs to be synergies so that when we get out of this event, now you can take that event that we just worked, the IR, and make it into a learning opportunity as a round table, a tabletop, a lessons learned back to the company, anonymizing some details, of course, but like you can just say, this is something we as an industry have tackled, and here's how we handled it. Here's how you enabled that. Like Joe's reported the email. Sally called the service desk because of the mouse jiggling and closing that loop.
I 100% agree with you on there. When I say long game, I think I mean like as part of the consistent communication, like we are in it for the strategy is long term, not short term. Whereas a lot of pieces are we need to fix it in the moment. But I agree with you. I sit in with my security operations team to make sure that I'm up to date so that I can communicate. We're a transparent company. We want to make sure that we're sharing the details in real time. I would say it's still on a proactive side. We want to teach people before they click something or before they respond to that text message. But I 100% agree with you. Not combative at all. We're on the same team. I agree.
You're kind of making my point for me, both of you, because I would redefine. I think we're going to burn people out if we don't redefine this role very, very quickly. Because what you're talking about is effectively you're working as a comms person, but you're also working as a training person, but you're also working as a security person as well, a technical writer. You're also working as a data analyst if you're running a phishing sim. And this can all be in one role. And at the same time, in the same breath, you'll be saying, but I'm going to do behavior change and culture. And let me tell you, when I worked in schools, like if we could change behavior, we would have done it by now. We'd have had that magic pill and that laser that could do it. So it's giving, I'm not, and I don't want to discuss the semantics of it at the moment, but I just think we're giving so many people so much. And then when I talk to people in the role, they're just exhausted with it. And so when I say, to answer the question about when is the right time, well, actually the time is as soon as possible, but it's when you're willing to have a discussion honestly about what that role is going to involve, because you are asking somebody to be like the comms person and then to actually manage a platform like a SharePoint or an intranet site, and then also talk to all these teams. And like, have we actually sat back and thought about the fact that they're like 3 or 4 different disciplines in themselves? Like you can do qualifications in comms and writing and training. It's very rare that you will get this person who can do it all. So why are we trying to make it? And then we're trying to make this person run all the time. Like, hey, can you quickly send out some comms on that? Well, okay, but that's still going to take me maybe 3 days if comms aren't talking to me. Then we've got to get branded. So all the rest of it. And then also, can you do that training? Oh, but can we do it on that? Oh, no, we can't have that. And we can't have the budget for that. Can you put that up? Why aren't people listening? Where's the metrics for that? Can we have the analytics on that? Like, try and do that in a week. But
you really just made me process how much I actually falls under me.
I'm saying people do. And I think I love the work, but it's the reason I go into startups now and talk to them, because you've got to get it right from the start. And I'm really concerned about the number of people I see burning out doing this role, and the number of kind of awareness conferences that kind of go, well, when you look at, I would suggest everybody takes a bit of a look at some of these conferences as well and some of these talks and kind of goes, right, okay, but what's the outcome? What's the outcome? Because if you're focused on outputs, you're just like throwing cards. I mean, Vegas is a great place to go and look at it. You're throwing, but what is actually happening? If you're putting money into that machine, you're putting your energy, but actually what are you getting out? Very little. That's what people need to ask as well for their well-being. But I'm a mom. I'm like,
well said. That's all I'll say. Well said. Quick.
Sorry.
How often you didn't know I didn't raise my hand? Well said.
Oh, that's funny. Well, thanks for all the comments, guys. That was just our first sort of open-ended question. We try and get a lot of value into here, but it's hard. I'm trying to launch polls so people can give their input on stuff, and somebody's going, well, it's kind of confusing. I'm trying to listen and and answer a poll question at the same time. It's just too much stuff to consume. So I apologize for that. But
it's welcome to security, Scott. We all have to multitask.
Oh, so is that what security is about?
It's more practice for everyone.
But I do want to just there was one question where it was how many people are in your team. Probably not all that relevant for more discussion, because I think it depends a lot on how big the team is to start with, or how big the organization is, and other factors that we've already talked about here. But the third poll question I did want to sort of examine a bit, and I think I'm sharing now, which is what's the biggest obstacle to success as a security awareness manager? This is similar to a question we've asked before, but might be useful to pose it in this context. And I think we got some interesting, almost fairly evenly distributed responses. 12% people said lack of budget, 24% said lack of time, 24% said lack of knowledge or what to do, how to do it. And 24% said lack of organizational support from senior management. And others entered obstacles as we need to balance what we ask of our team with the time they have to do their regular tasks. Lots of people have too many responsibilities. Great point. Thanks very much, John. And Jason also mentioned we need to balance. Oh, sorry, that was Jason. Sorry, John's was security is not about technology. Cybersecurity is about people, and might be quoting somebody. I don't know who it is. Scott, whoever that is. Anyway, so yeah, great responses. Thanks very much, folks. It's good to see the insights from people in different organizations and different roles. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and go to our next open question. We're almost out of time, so we'll give people a few minutes for this question discussion, and then we'll start talking about next time. So what are the most effective techniques for garnering support as a security? Cletus.
I'll keep preaching the same thing I've been preaching. Lean on people like me in your organization. Come find your security operations teams and just get to know them. Like, ask them to include you in conversations. And to Michelle's point too, make friends with marketing, make friends with comms, make friends with your legal team, because like there's going to be a partnership. We've talked about in other calls, you need security champions. They can be part of your security champions, and you could work with their leadership team to say, hey, can Lindsay be part of this effort? Can Mark be part of this effort? And like, you get buy-in as development opportunities to allow them to see the other side from all these lines of businesses. So garnering support is just building a network inside of your own organization, both in security and in the lines of businesses, as well as asking, as we've already talked about, for executives to give top-down comms and support and kudos.
Excellent point. Aaron?
On top of what he just said, what Cletus just said, in a broader sense, just overall visibility. And it is about reaching out to your teams and saying, hey, and introducing yourself. Make sure what you say shows the value add that you're bringing to the table. It doesn't have to be metrics necessarily. It could just be, here are my ideas and here's why, we think it's going to be effective. It doesn't have to have all these statistics around it, just to start getting support. But visibility in general is super important to just get your face, get your name out into your organization. We do onboarding training, and we just had a C-suite level person in the onboarding training because we treat everybody the same. And they asked for specific training for their team in the onboarding session because they saw the value. So the more you get your face out and the more you do stuff, this might sound really silly, but I just taught a Zumba class for my company, and those are now 15 people that know who I am and can see what department I'm in, and maybe want to come and have a conversation with me about it. And it's not just necessarily support from your senior leadership, but you can start at the bottom. You can start at any level. The more support you have, the more people that are preaching what you have to say. Just get your face out there. Just get your word out there. The most visible you can be.
Yeah, become your own champion, right? I mean, it's and then inspire others to follow suit and try and touch as many cross-functional teams as possible. And I think, like, if you get someone from marketing, you get someone from finance in your corner, it's going to go a long way.
One of the things I wanted to add to, Ryan and I have talked to quite a few people over the last month or two who are new to security awareness, right? And their organization is just starting to focus on the role. And it can be hard. Not everybody has the skills to do outreach, easily. And so I think we all need to kind of support those folks. And if you're about to choose a security awareness manager, you should be looking at making sure it is somebody who's comfortable with doing that kind of outreach as well, because that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and shameless plug, we're actually working on a bit of a guide right now for security awareness managers and how to get some of that support and from our learnings and best practices. So hope look for that in the near future.
Awesome. Okay, so we're getting very close to the end. I'm just going to share some exciting stuff with people. Of course, it's all about our next session. So we've covered a lot of the insights. Did want to mention Security Awareness Month is a little over a month away, not too far off. So we do have a promo called the Security Awareness Month Challenge Pack, and it gets people engaged with 4 security awareness challenges that are gamified over a 4-week period. So really easy to set up, really inexpensive, and gets people engaged really quickly. So next session in 2 weeks, September 6th, and it will be on Beyond Phishing Links. What else do employees need to learn about? So we talk a lot about clicks, right, and links that people are clicking on. But there are a lot of other things that are starting to become really important that we need to make sure people are aware of. How do we train them on that stuff? How do we assess them? So that'll be a fun discussion. Hopefully this QR code will get you to the Zoom page for registering for that one. I'd love to see you all back here then. And want to thank everybody for all their input. And Ryan, any last comments from the chat or panelists that we want to
I think, well, John said last thing here in a nutshell, Aaron, be a good storyteller, use humor, be persistent, tailor your message, be patient, and get feedback. Just a few small tips. But yeah, those are some really core tips on how to be an effective security awareness manager. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And it's always a pleasure to have this conversation with you all.
That's great. I hope John comes back every time so he can do a summary of the whole session for us in a paragraph, and that'll help with our transcripts too. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks, and have a great week. Thanks very much.